Good afternoon and welcome to Rapid City's Legal and Finance Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 10th. I'd like to start the meeting with the roll call and determination of quorum, please, Stacy. Thank you. Now's the time to adopt today's agenda. If there's any seated committee member that would like to modify today's agenda, I'd like to hear from them now. If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt today's agenda. Got a motion by Laurenti to adopt the agenda for today. Second by Drew. Any discussion? Seeing none? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The agenda has been adopted. Now's the time for general public comment. This is a time for any members of the audience to address the committee today on any item that is currently not on the agenda. I currently have no speaker request forms for general public comment. Am I missing anyone? Seeing none? General public comment is now closed. We're moving on to consent items. Consent items are items 1 through 13 today. Public comment is now opened on consent items 1 through 13. I currently have no speaker request forms for any of the consent items 1 through 13 today. Am I missing anyone? Seeing none, public comment is now closed. We are now on to considering... Oh, Mayor, you would like to talk about consent items 1 through 13?
Well, I have to admit I was in the meeting room over here in another meeting and I just heard your gavel, but I wanted to make sure, I wanted to look at this real quick and see if we got an item on here. The contract for budget, yes. So that's on there. Never mind. Thanks, sorry.
Oh, the walk-on item is on non-consent, Mayor, so if you don't mind, we'll address that when we come to the non-consent calendar. All right, so again, I have no speaker request forms for public comment on consent items 1 through 13. Am I missing anyone? One last time. Seeing none, public comment is now closed. We're now going to consider consent items 1 through 13. If there's any members that would like items pulled from the consent calendar for separate consideration, I'd like to hear from you now. The chair would like to recognize Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 2, please.
I have item number 2. Chair would like to recognize Alderwoman Drew.
That was the item I was going to pull, so.
Chair would like to recognize Alderman Nordstrom.
Item number 11, please.
All right. Are there any other speaker lights? Currently, we are going to pull item number 2 and number 11 to be for separate consideration. Seeing no further lights, I'll entertain a motion to approve the balance of the consent calendar. I've got a motion by Laurenti to approve items 1 through 13 on the consent calendar, except items number 2 and item number 11. Second by Nordstrom. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2 is the request to approve the Kirk Funeral Home request for free parking for senior movies. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can, I'd like to ask Finance Officer a question on this particular item.
Yes, you may.
Pauline, I just wanted to make sure, because I do support the approval of it, but I just want to make sure, of course, that we, as far as we can tell from a bonding standpoint, there's not very many dates involved with this particular free parking. I just wanted to make sure we're solid, even outside of the determination of this, with our bonding and paying for our commitments there with the parking.
I haven't looked at the coverage ratio for the 2015 year, however, and looking at some comparisons from when we went from 2-hour to 3-hour parking year to year, just that alone, we're only a couple $1,000s difference, and so we should be fine with our bonds. Yeah, we're about a couple $1,000s less than in 2014, but again, we should be fine with our bonds. That's not going to hurt our bond coverage ratio.
Okay, thank you.
Chair would like to recognize Alderwoman Drew.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of questions for Ken Kirk, please.
Yes, sir, if you wouldn't mind approaching the podium, state your name and your affiliation to the city, and if you wouldn't mind answering Alderwoman Drew's questions, that would be appreciated.
Thank you. My name is Ken Kirk, managing partner of Kirk Funeral Home.
Okay, thank you, Ken. You don't feel that the 3-hour limit is enough for most seniors to see a movie and get back to their vehicles? Now that it's 3 hours, most movies, I'm guessing, are 2 hours.
Where we run into trouble, Darla, is if some of the people, the movies start at 10 o'clock, and some of them start showing up about 9.
Okay.
So we're already 1 hour into the 3 hours, and then if it's a 2-hour movie, by the time they would get back to their cars, or if it's a little longer than 2 hours, even if we instruct them to return to their cars and not do any shopping, sometimes it has the potential to go over even the 3-hour limit. So we don't want them to come back to their car and get all upset because they were issued a parking ticket. So.
Well, I wouldn't want to discourage shopping or coming downtown in any way, and 10 o'clock in the morning seems reasonable. Something we used to do at the Doll when we had senior events to prevent ticketing is we would issue like a pink slip and then let the authorities, the police, know that this is a senior parking spot.
Yes, ma'am.
And if they go a little bit over 3 hours, please give them a little grace. So that might be something that you guys could look at as a way to make sure that your patrons are, protected from those fines and things like that. I mean, I have nothing against it, but I can see a problem coming up with this unless they're somehow indicated as seniors going to the movie and maybe shopping.
Yes, ma'am. May Colleen Phillips from our staff
I have no
comment,
problem with
Darla?
talking to Colleen. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Colleen Phillips, and I'm the one that organizes all these movies. When it went down to the 2-hour parking, when we had the 2-hour parking, what we worked out with the police department was to put, they either can use the postcard that they get in the mail for their free parking that we asked to put in the dashboard, or they can use the ad out of the paper that we place in the paper on their dashboard, or if they forget both of those, I have these big green sheets that say Kirk Funeral Home movie parking, and we put those in there, and to my knowledge, those have been very helpful. So when the ladies that come by and do the ticketing, they see those and they do give that extra grace period.
So you want to continue that effort then?
Yes, we would. We've got everybody kind of doing that now, and so if we can continue that, I think that will just help everybody out in the situation.
Colleen, how many spaces are we looking at here?
On average, we have anywhere from 200 to 400 people come down for our movies.
Oh, that's a
and
lot.
we do encourage them to stay downtown, but we just encourage them to move their vehicle. They just have to go back to their vehicle, find another block, and then stay downtown. We always do gift cards as door prizes, and they're always from the downtown businesses, so we always want them to, because that's a benefit to our city, so we always want them to have that benefit of knowing to stay downtown and stuff. But yeah, we average 200 to 400 people. So you double up, you're talking about maybe up to 200 parking spots.
And so you've been doing this for a while? How long?
Since I think 2003.
Okay. Well, you have experience with it, and so I think I can give this my yes. So thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, if the committee would allow me, I'd like to ask Chief Jegras a question. Chief, if you could also let us know, since the time allotted for parking in the downtown area has been increased to the 3 hours, are you anticipating any complaints from business owners, or do you find that the seniors that partake of this movie time actually encourage and help with the business downtown?
I think you're going to find a mixed reaction there. Like Colleen said, there is up to an additional 200 vehicles parked in the downtown area. That really does cause some people to have to walk farther to their destination. And at the same time, I put in the memo that I wrote for the council that also, in my mind, justifies why you would continue to do this. But because a lot of the seniors that are going to the movie, they aren't going to find a place within a block of the Elks Theater. They're going to have to walk several blocks still to get to where they're going. So that's why I think that based on the council's previous support of this issue, that's why I made the recommendation that you consider approval.
Thank you, Chief. And then I did get some more lights up here, so the chair would like to recognize Alderman Lewis.
Do we have a motion?
Currently, there is no motion.
Make a
on the
motion to
floor.
approve. Hold the floor. Thank
Got a
you.
motion by Lewis to approve, second by Laurenti, and Alderman Lewis, you still have the floor.
Sir, how often is this? I don't have the agenda, the link to the agenda. How often do these movies take place?
Colleen, is it about 4 times a year at the most?
That's
3
fine.
times?
That's all I wanted. I was trying to
3
point
times.
that out to people. It's just, it's not like we're talking every Saturday.
No, sir.
People, yeah, so it's not like it's 3 times a year. So, okay, 3 times a year, we're making an accommodation for the senior citizens in our city. I think that's not a big deal. And I, as a person who was big on the downtown parking extension to start with, I think it's obviously good for the community. So
Thank
you
you.
have my support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, no further discussion, we do have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Item, yes, and Alderwoman Drew just wanted me to remind you that this committee is making the recommendation for approval, but it will go before full council Tuesday night of next week, not Monday, Tuesday night. Thank you. Item number 11 is the resolution number 2016-006 to amend the City of Rapid City non-union compensation plan by establishing the new position of the library makerspace manager at the library. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam President, or Madam Chair. Is the library folks here? Yes. Would you, could you, Sean? Yeah. Could you come to the podium, please?
Yes.
Sean, I've got some concerns about this position and its needs that you have for the library. Can you justify the value of this position for the library?
I think I can. My name is Sean Minkle. I'm the Assistant Director at Rapid City Public Library. So the Makerspace Manager position is going to be responsible for what we've already been doing for about a year now, which is the Makerspace. It's got 3D printing, it's going to have laser engraving, it's got videography, green screens, audio recording, a lot of technology that is new to the library but still meets the traditional role of libraries in providing access to people that might otherwise not have access. We feel that it's important to the community because we want our community to be technologically savvy as these things become more prevalent and important. We want locals to be ready to go to colleges like the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, where I went. And having a manager, somebody that's specifically responsible for maintaining that, I think is required because we're going to be doing so much outreach to the community. We're going to be doing programming, partnerships, and just a lot of like teaching and things that regular staff really aren't going to be able to do to the extent that we need. Does that answer your question?
Partly, and can you give us some data or some rationale behind the needs? What is the needs assessment for this? Meaning, like, are you coming in with a lot of customers? Can you validate that data that says we got a lot of customers coming in and says we would like to have this service?
I can give you anecdotal data. Since we've only been going for about a year, we don't have anything specific as far as statistics. If you look at a map of makerspaces in the U.S., for example, there is one site in particular that I was looking at recently. It's called themakermap.com. If you go there, you'll see that there's a big empty space in South Dakota. There are makerspaces all around us. We're one state that doesn't have anything like this. So I think there is a defined need there. We also went to business. Some of you might have been there last night, and we were talking about our makerspace. And everyone that came in was excited about what we had to offer, surprised that the library had this for them, and talking about getting people in there that they knew were interested and would be coming in to look at this technology, to use the 3D printing to make prototypes, to fix issues or to get ready for school. So I really do think that it has value to the community. The only other thing I'd say is we are planning on filling this position with our existing budget. We do have several vacancies planned for this year, several people that are retiring that have been longstanding employees. So I don't think it's going to be an impact monetarily.
Thank you. I've just got some concerns within the job description itself.
Okay.
I don't need to get down in the weeds at this point, but just within the job descriptions, I've got at least a couple, if not three, concerns on that. But at this point, I need a little bit more sales pitch on this. And I don't want to take up too much more time on this, but from this point, but I'm not supporting it at this time, but that I don't want to make sure that I will leave the door open for that opportunity.
Okay.
But you got to sell me a little bit further on this. Thank you.
Could I invite everyone on the council to maybe come down to the library and tour our makerspace, see what it's about at some point?
You
I
can
mean, we'd be
always
open.
invite everybody on the council. Whether we have time in our schedules to make it before Tuesday night is the big question. So before I go on to any other committee members, because I still have lights, I do want to remind everybody that if we can either hold this in committee or we can send to council without recommendation, or we can give council a recommendation on this item. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was going to make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank
Got
you.
a motion by Lewis to approve, second by Drew. Alderman Lewis, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So we are not talking about asking for any extra additional tax dollars from the public.
No.
So then this just brought forward because it's a budgetary concern that we have to make a final approval, correct?
Yes.
But so you're not asking for any extra money. It's just basically an internal thing that you're doing within the. And so
That's correct.
our need to tell you how to run your library is. I'm just curious. I guess I've had some issues at the library, obviously, but this is not one that I think is a big general public concern. I'm not gonna. If you guys know how to get you get your information out there, go for it. I have my support. So I just think that unless we're actually running the library these days, I don't think we need to bother with it. As long as they're not asking for extra money. So thank you.
Chair recognizes Alderwoman Drew.
Thank you, Chairwoman Scott. Have a couple more questions for Sean, if I may. You are moving the makerspace to a larger space, is that correct?
Yes, we are planning on moving it from where it's currently temporarily residing in the library into our garage area. It's going to be refurbished, and it'll be a lot bigger than it currently is. We'll have room for more people to be in there using it. So.
And so you really feel the need for more room? I mean...
Definitely. Someplace that is set aside where the noise that typically comes from 3D printing and engraving, some of the other things that we plan on putting in there, won't be bothering our more traditional library patrons who are there to read or just spend time with people they know. So.
Well, I really have no problem with, the idea of a maker space and bringing in new technologies, and certainly where this space is left open in South Dakota, it certainly is something that the younger people are looking at and expecting out of future libraries. So if you're really having a visionary library, you would be going towards this kind of a space. For anybody who doesn't understand a maker space, maybe you could talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So the makerspace, as I said a little bit, we do have 3D printers, but it's more than that. It's a place where people can come and use tools that they wouldn't otherwise have access to as individuals. If you look back at what libraries have done in the past, we've always provided access to information, technology, and resources that the individual person may not have been able to afford, largely so that you didn't end up with a certain, like an elite class that has information and education, and a lower class that doesn't. The makerspace takes what used to be books and DVDs and audiobooks and says, okay, people are doing more hands-on learning. They're coming together to learn. We want them to do that at the library, and we can help them. So we're going to have 3D printers, laser engravers, audio, video equipment, anything basically that you can learn hands-on but probably can't afford to have in your own home. Things that kind of encourage kids, young adults, and adults to learn something that maybe they weren't able to before.
Well, I'm going to support this, and I think when you're looking at future trends, or even getting ready to work more with the School of Mines, as the city has made a commitment to doing, and keeping young people engaged and in our community. I think this is a step in the right direction, so I'll be voting yes. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Chair would like to recognize Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair, for anticipating that. That was very keen. Sir, if you can just briefly give me your insight on how this impacts the library's budget.
So my understanding of how this is going to impact the library's budget, well, we are talking about adding a manager position from our existing pool. We're not adding an FTE here. We have at least 3 people that I know of that are long-term employees that are going to be retiring this year, and we anticipate savings in that area by quite a bit. Last time I was talking about it with the business office, basically we decided there's no impact at all.
So this isn't going to be a net gain in...
I don't believe so.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, we do have a motion on the floor, but I'd like to also offer up my reasons for voting no on this. When I saw this on the agenda, and I see the job description, much as Alderman Nordstrom has already indicated, I am in favor of the makerspace from what I've read about it, because I do appreciate the information that was provided me as far as what the makerspace is about. My question is on the manager position itself and what those duties actually are required. As you've already indicated, this has only been going on at the Rapid City Library for a year, so I'm a little confused why we need a manager all of a sudden to jump into this. I mean, unless you're actually going to be recruiting with the School of Mines and Technology to start a summer program, I'm having a hard time understanding why we have to jump up to a manager level. I also haven't had the information that helps make me more comfortable. You say you have people who are retiring, but does that mean you're not fulfilling those jobs? Because I will tell you, lately Rapid City has had a rude awakening in when we try to bring in talent, we're finding out that our wages have a tendency to be a little low. So I don't think it's a very fair reasoning to think that just because you have people who are retiring that you're going to have FTE dollars that you can attribute to a new position, even if you're not increasing your FTEs. So at this time, I would have preferred this continued in committee so that we could have been educated. As it stands, I will be voting no, and I don't see myself changing before Tuesday night. So seeing no further speaker lights, we're ready for a vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries with a recommendation to approve to the City Council Tuesday night on the vote 3-2. The 2 noes were Alderman Nordstrom and myself. That is the conclusion of the consent calendar. We are now moving on to non-consent items, items 14 through 17 on today's agenda. Public comment is now open on non-consent items 14 through 17. I have no speaker request forms on non-consent items, and am I missing anyone from the audience? Seeing none? Public comment is now closed. We're on to consider non-consent items. Item number 14 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6092 to update the snow removal procedure in the City of Rapid City by amending Chapter 10.48 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Chair would like to recognize Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could ask the Chief of Police a question on this particular item.
Yes, you may.
Chief, can you, I know that you understand this one. I just want to know what your opinion is on the impact of enforcement, you know, with the new procedure, with people who are trying to do the right thing, say, you know, they're leaving their vehicle down here because they've drank too much. Along that line and maybe some other areas I haven't thought of. Granted, maybe people need to make sure they have a designated driver they bring with them now too, but I just wanted to get your sense of the change in this procedure.
My understanding is that there will be an educational component to this, and there will be I would call it, we would ease into the transition in that the city intends to take a soft approach the first snowstorm or two. And of course, Daryl Schumacher, the communications director for the city, will be pushing out a lot of information during the first couple of snowstorms and following up afterwards. So I think we're going to be able to effectively transition the community into compliance. And the time of day that we would actually down the road be doing the towing would be the middle of the night, early in the morning, and that's a time frame that we will be able to assist Public Works in accomplishing that task.
Okay, thank you. And I anticipated you would say that. I was just concerned that, people are, granted, they're drinking too much. That's probably not a wise decision, but it happens. We know that. So I just wanted to make sure that we've, thought this through. And I'm still gelling on the thought of, I support it. Obviously, we need to get our roads cleared. And we're talking about the parking area, not the actual traveling area of the roads, the traffic areas. But I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Chair would like to recognize Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, if I could, I'd like to move to approve the ordinance change.
I've got a motion by Nordstrom to approve item number 14 and a second by Laurenti. Alderman Nordstrom, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see I've got Mr. Brumbaugh in the audience. If I can call him up to the podium, please. Start with you.
Mr. Brumbaugh, if you would approach the podium, state your name and your affiliation to the city, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Don Brumbaugh, City Street Superintendent.
Thank you, Don. And thank you for attending this meeting as well. What I'm getting as feedback from the primarily the business people from downtown is that they're able to or will do the shoveling of the snow from the sidewalk and put it into the gutter. And then their feedback to me is that the city comes along and is able to remove that snow, most of it, but not all of it. And then what's happening from the big equipment being used, some of that, or a lot of that, I can't say all of it, but a lot of that snow is getting moved back up onto the sidewalks. Have you got a policy or procedure in place to get that, shall I say, the second time removal of that snow?
In regard to the first, what we try to do is go in first with a motor grader and actually pull the snow away from the curb and gutter so we can get at it with a heavier piece of equipment like a front-end loader and move it either into piles or into trucks. What we see if we get a lot of snow downtown is the snow doesn't get all the way off. There's still some left on top of the curb that we can't get at. And quite honestly, there isn't enough hours in the day to go down there and hand shovel all that off. So typically that'll stay. In the case of parked cars, if we have to go in and around cars, a motor grader is a big piece of equipment. And in those areas, an example would be the 600 block of St. Joe. There's no less than a dozen cars on both sides of the street on any given night. And during snow events, if we're weaving in and out of cars, we're having to try to do that with a front-end loader. And a front-end loader along that curb can't pull the snow out. It just pushes it, and you will get snow rolling off the side of it. For that reason, we try to use the motor graders. One of the purposes of this ordinance change is so that we can get some of those cars out of our way so that we can use the motor graders and the heavier pieces of equipment that do a better job of snow removal. And that's primarily what we're focusing on. We did do this procedure, it's been 15, 20 years ago now since we've done any amount of towing downtown to facilitate snow removal operations. And I think based on a couple of snowstorms here lately, we're seeing the need to have to go back to that, whether it's a change in people living downtown or more people living downtown, more people leaving their cars downtown, that sort of thing. We found it necessary in order to do a decent job that we've got to get them out. So,
if I can ask another question.
Yes.
Mr. Brumbaugh, if in the areas where there is handicapped accessibility, another story or anecdotal information that I'm getting is some of that snow is piled up into those ramps, or where the wheelchair or ADA accessibility is an area of concern, where the snow is removed, but it also gets placed in those ramps. What are we doing to get that moved out of there? Is that a Parks Department problem then at that point, or do they take over, or how does that work?
Well, we're working with our, to back up a little bit, we do use contractors downtown, and that's an educational process in itself to get all the policies and procedures and so on through the contractors. But we typically, based on pricing and so on, have had one contractor that's been helping us most of the time. So he's getting educated and knows not to pile snow anymore in the handicap spots. And as far as that excess snow, most of those handicap spots are right in that corner of the node. You just can't get in there with a piece of heavy equipment.
Right.
And we've worked with Scott over at the Parks Department, and when they're down there shoveling off the nodes and so on, they're going to take care of the handicap access points. And after we go downtown, he's planning on coming back through and checking those the following days. So.
Thank you, and I wish Parks Department was here, but I do want to applaud Scott Anderson is his name, that is trying to do the best he can with what he's got. But still, we have that snow getting piled up in those ADA accessible, and as you mentioned, in the nodes. So if we can work out a procedure or policy to get that snow removed out of there at the same time, I believe the business people would be really appreciative of that,
Yeah,
and as well as the customers.
Scott was on it in good time last time, and I think it's on everybody's radar now, so I think it'll be a lot less of a problem than what it was.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate it.
Sure.
I yield.
Seeing no further lights, I do have a motion on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 15 is the introduction and first reading of ordinance number 6094 regarding the supplemental appropriation number 1 for 2016. I've got a motion by Laurenti to deny. Do I have a second? Motion fails due to no second. I've got a motion by Nordstrom to approve. Second. I've got a second by Alderwoman Drew. Chair recognizes Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And the reason that I made a motion to deny was because I had previously stood against the gross waste of the taxpayers' money, and that's what this supplemental includes, is the $67,000 to pay for the utilities for a nonprofit group for the Main Street Square, which was paid for by Vision Funds. I think over $3 million of the taxpayers' money in Vision Funds. And honestly, we need to really think about it when we are approving these Vision Fund projects, which are supposed to be great things for the community, because the fact of the matter is we're now creating liabilities through the Vision Funds for the taxpayers when we do this very thing. This council soundly defeated, if you remember the history of this, because it goes back to an $80,000 request for a green team for Main Street Square for the downtown. And during those budget hearings, we soundly defeated that. In my opinion, it seems very obvious that this was a comeback to replace that fact that we had defeated that. Unfortunately, it was approved. I voted against it. But the fact of the matter is, we raised taxes during that same budget, saying that it was sorely needed because of the cost of government. And are we to tell the taxpayers that one of those costs is now to pay the utilities of a nonprofit group who stood before this committee, or stood before at least the budget hearings, if I can remember right, and said their finances were sound. They had no issues. I specifically asked the question, and that group said specifically they had no problems. So nobody asked any questions. We just decided to put this particular liability on the taxpayers, and I'm just warning this committee and not only this council that when we approve these Vision Funds, the people supported the Vision Funds back in, I think, 1995, but the more we start creating liabilities with vision projects like we are here, we're going to find people who are going to have some issues with the Vision Fund itself, which is, as we all know, is an unbelievable fund of money that we receive every year that does great things in our city. But I don't think the taxpayers want to see these Vision Funds become ongoing liabilities in perpetuity, because that's what we're going to be doing here. This is not a park. It's never been part of the park system. It's not part of the park system today. It's a Vision Fund project, which was a great Vision Fund project, but we're marring it by doing this type of thing. And if it was needed, that's one thing. But that group said that they were financially sound. Could not give an answer as to why they were requesting this. In fact, we leased this Main Street Square to the DRC. So why they didn't go to the DRC first to find out what they could do, I don't even know why it was before us. And sadly, we have created a liability of at least $67,000 per year for the taxpayers and coming from the general fund. I yield.
Chair recognizes Alderwoman Drew.
Well, as I recall, when we had this discussion, Jeff Bigler was here and was asked if it was classified as a park and it was run under the park system. He said yes. And we pay utilities and water for other parks in the area. So it was my understanding that that's why we went ahead with the $67,000, because it was parkland. And we do that with the other parks. So I see that you don't agree with that, but maybe we should take it up with the Parks Department and see what this is really classified as before we go ahead and take away this money that is given to the rest of parks. I yield.
Chair recognizes Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll concur with Alderwoman Drew about the status of that Main Street Square being considered a parks, and that is part of the park system. So I don't have any problems with this being converted over to the city, taking care of the utilities part of it. And as Alderwoman Drew directed here just a moment ago, is that Main Street Square needed some assistance on that. So it was concluded that we do a cooperative effort, a good partnership with Main Street Square to do our portion of that, to take care of the utilities. So I don't see a real strong objection to supporting this portion of that supplement. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no further lights, I'd like to address a question to our Finance Officer, Pauline Sumption. Pauline, supplemental appropriation number 1, isn't this the monies that are brought forward into the 2016 budget from 2015 fiscal year that have been obligated to but have not been paid?
That is typically how it's done because of the way that our IFAS system operated. However, Tyler operates differently, so we don't have to. It's already accrued as part of the year-end process in the Tyler system, so that normal one that we have for Supplement 1 is no longer a needed item. So while the Vision Fund projects are being carried over, that is the only carryover amounts in this supplemental appropriation.
So when Alderman Laurenti is talking about the $67,000 then, wasn't that approved in the 2016 budget? Why would it appear in the supplemental appropriation number 1?
The request came in after the budget was adopted, and the council authorized the amendment to the agreement, and so we have to supplement the budget to be able to pay for what was agreed upon in that agreement.
Okay, so the council's already voted on approving this. However, it did not make it in time before the final decision or the second reading of the budget.
Correct.
Chair would like to recognize Alderwoman Drew.
Thank you, Chair. I really feel that if there's anything that the city could really support and has seen, the growth of the downtown, it started at Main Street Square. A lot of things have improved downtown since the inception of that project. I think that we can support it, and I think the people that live in Rapid City would heartily support us giving them their utility funds, because this is an area that's used constantly, not only in the summer but all winter long, and it's so obvious. I mean, there's just a vision there that people in this city and from outside of the city are using that area throughout the year. So I don't think our taxpayers would really have a problem saying, yeah, this is a good thing, this is what we want to see our taxes used on, because most of the people inside Rapid City and outside of Rapid City use this facility so often that I think it's easy to justify this expenditure.
Chair would like to recognize Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to say that everything Alderwoman Drew just stated is correct, except that was the case when the taxpayers weren't paying for the utilities. All of those benefits were being seen before we were paying for the utilities. So I agree with her on that part. What we never asked, except for myself, is what has changed? What is it about the Main Street Square that needed to change? Because I thought it had to be finances, but the fact of the matter is it wasn't finances. They said that they were sound. They had no problems. So why the change? Nobody's asking, and to me that says a lot. And I don't even know if this is on,
Yeah,
surprisingly.
I think it is.
It is Alderman Laurenti.
So
I will not vote to support this, especially given the fact that this particular new item into the budget is fully 25% of the tax increase that was put on the taxpayers. So I can't support that. Thank you.
Seeing no further lights, the motion on the floor is to approve item number 15. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Aye. Motion carries with item number 14 going to council as an approved item with 1 no, and that's Alderman Laurenti. Item number 16 is a second reading and recommendation of ordinance number 6091, repealing Chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to wards and precincts, and adopting a new revised Chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Got a motion by Laurenti to approve, second by Drew. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 17 is an item being brought forward to the committee by the mayor, and the item itself is to authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign professional services agreement allowing implementation of a priority-based budgeting for the 2017 city budget. Mayor, I believe we have quite a few questions, and we'll wait to hear from you because you may be able to answer several of them since this item is coming before us brand new. Chair would like to recognize Mayor Allender.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and sorry for walking this on the agenda. I think this might be the first time I've done this since I've been mayor, so certainly haven't made a habit of it. This item, we've been working on this item for the last several weeks and months, and just got needed clarification on the scope of services on this contract, and we're able to get the contract through the city attorney's office. If not, I would have put it on to the next agenda. But at this point in the budget phase, on the budget calendar for preparation for the 2017 budget, time is becoming short already in preparing the 17 budget. So I wanted to get it on now. I promise between now and Tuesday night, I will provide you all of the information you could possibly desire regarding this information. I will give you a copy of the scope of the agreement over and above what is in the contract, which is probably not linked yet. I will give you a basic rundown on the benefits and the costs of this particular item, and we'll solicit your feedback then and on Tuesday night. So in a nutshell, priority-based budgeting is a budgeting system that was not invented by us. It does not mirror other government budgeting practices on its surface. It has a component of greater accountability. It requires city government departments to go deeper into the justification phase and focuses on why we fund things rather than how. That, I think, is something we've been lacking for quite some time. This particular system is provides greater visibility and transparency. It provides a greater understanding, not only from city staff and elected officials, but also from the general consumer or taxpayer. This budgeting system focuses on programs. So each thing that the city does will be consolidated into a program. It'll be articulated as a needed program that will go through a scoring process to let everyone see how the program rates within the department. So Public Works is one city department that has essentially has all of the necessary structure to convert easily over into priority-based budgeting. For example, snow removal is a program, and snow removal has its own cost center. So if we would be able to display that in such a way to let the public and let ourselves understand what is required to remove snow and clear snow from this city, What the exact costs of the supplies, equipment, materials, and labor is for that specific program, we would better understand how that works. So Public Works is set up for this because they have a number of different cost centers. The departments where it's going to be a bit more of a challenge to implement are the departments that are strictly a general fund department, such as the police department. And I speak of that because I'm more familiar with their budget. So the police department essentially is one cost center. Everything that they do is contained within. It does not let us understand what the cost of having a K-9 program is. So in dividing out the K-9 program, for example, we'll see the costs of the animals, the upkeep, the food, the veterinary service. We'll see the special equipment and supplies that are required by K-9 officers, the special equipment that goes into their vehicles, and the vehicles that are dedicated to that one program. So everything inclusive, with the exception of any used workspace back at the public safety building, because this can be overdone to where we have to hire a bookkeeper for every department, but we will see what the actual cost of having that particular program. So also in the police we have professional accident investigators, we have community service officers, we have investigations, we have a variety training and professional standards. So there are a variety of programs in there that will be articulated by themselves to let everyone know what the cost of that component is. So this will create a good visual of that. It will create a structure for funding so that if a department has 12 programs, the sum total of the 12 programs will be the department's overall budget. It will include administration, overhead, labor, supplies, materials, and so on, and it will be designated appropriately to each program. There are some huge advantages in this. And this works on the premise of this, that this city is not broke. And during budget time, and I've been through a number of them, and at times I may have been part of the problem when we come here to say, well, we have this function that we always do, we've always done it, and we need more money for it, and that's the only argument. So we should be focusing more as a government agency on why we do the things we do, not how we do them or when we do them, but why. The city is not broke. In fact, the city is loaded. The city collects in fees and taxpayer funds $150 to $60 million annually, and we should just be doing a more thorough job articulating how we're going to spend that money. Generally speaking, the people deserve to know more where their money's going and for what purposes. So this particular vendor in this contract, which is the Center for Priority-Based Budgeting from the Denver area, this is the right vendor. These folks are former county officials who developed this budgeting style, who had so much request for instruction in this style because of its proven performance that they branched away from the county government and formed their own company. And so, I don't know, a couple of years ago, or at least a year ago, there was some preparation done to prepare for the switchover to priority-based budgeting. Brett Limbaugh has some experience with this, has formed a relationship with this particular group of contractors, and has positioned our city to convert more easily than the standard agency would convert over to this. There is a lot of work done in preparation of this to this point. We have a working trust of the contractor, and we've had several interactions with them, including a review of the scope of the contract and so on. The program cost to implement these contractors in this style, which includes a web-based software that will allow us to display where our priorities are when we fund one thing, where the money comes from within the budget, what the costs, what the up and downside is of defunding a program, where the money goes, where we would direct it to go. And all of this will be weighed heavily against our comprehensive plan and the 7 core principles in that plan. The cost of this is $38,000. That is the initial cost. The ongoing cost after this will be approximately $20,000. So I would recommend that in 2016 we would fund this out of undesignated cash as a one-time purchase. Since we are at the beginning of the 2017 budget process, that we would put the $20,000 for budgeting under that item in the budget. And I'm not going to reveal any specifics at this point, but I can tell you just as simply in the preparation to get started for priority-based budgeting, this $38,000 has been recouped several times over in theory. We have identified programs that do not need to continue and that we can save money on, and so there will be a savings on this 2017 budget.
Thank you, Mayor. If you wouldn't mind standing in case there are any questions from committee members up here. The chair would like to recognize Alderman Laurenti.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can, Mayor, I don't want to say it's breathtaking, but the change in our budget, at least from your perception, and the revenues that the city receives has changed significantly since the first time you spoke to us after you were sworn in. So I'm kind of taken back a little bit by that, but because I think when you were sworn in, you said you thought we had a revenue problem, a tax revenue problem, and now you're saying that the city is loaded, that we have a lot of money. Let's just say you're not, I don't know if you're on the record as saying that we don't have a revenue problem, but to me, what you just said and what you said after you were sworn in are, in my opinion, diametrically opposed, which I'm proud to hear, honestly, because that's what I believe. And my questions to you, and maybe you'll be able to answer them better as we get to Tuesday night, but some of my questions have to deal with the fact budget hearings. Assume we'll still have budget hearings when we have major changes to the budget. Do these run back through the consultant and through this software? That'd be one question. Number two, from the software standpoint.
Alderman Laurenti, should we let?
No, I'm not done.
So are
The software,
I'm just asking for.
Well, I think he could.
Are you proposing questions for him to answer Tuesday night? Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think he can handle a two-part question.
That's all I was checking.
My
to
other
make
question,
sure you wanted an answer today.
My other question is, we just gone through a large purchase for the finance office for software, and I'm just wondering if we're buying something that is repetitive. There's some capabilities. What is it that this software, and I assume, is the $38,000 just for the software, and then ongoing, if you can define that, the $20,000?
Mayor, so if you can understand the two-part question, number one was any changes to the budget, will they have to go back through consultants, followed up with the purchase of the Tyler software. Is this a double purchase?
Got it. As the budget evolves from this point forward into the formal presentation of the budget in July and the subsequent budget hearings, the contractors with this company are here to put us in a position to handle all of the future changes to the budget, all of the administration of this program. So they are here to get us up to speed to run their software and to run our budget. So they will be here only in the beginning and will not be around here in July as far as I can tell. So those changes will be easily made. The software will display in a much different way than an Excel spreadsheet would. It will be reflective of how we've prioritized our programs, how much the comprehensive plan weighs into the budgeting process, if our budgeting practices meet our stated philosophy on budgeting, and so on. As far as duplication, it's my understanding that Tyler has something similar to a priority budgeting component, which we're not paying for, not paying support on. There's only one time for this software to interact with our current software. and that is to preload all of the cost centers and amounts. And this is an easy process. Our software in Tyler, all the data in Tyler can be downloaded to Excel. This priority-based budgeting software is set up to upload from Excel, so it'll only be on getting the framework built. All of the other changes after that will be manual and will be interactive. So I don't believe there's duplication. We are generally aware of the capabilities of the Tyler system, and there's nothing comparable about them to this specific program that I'm talking about. So $38,000 covers the training, implementation, delivery of the software. And that's probably not the right name for it because it's a web-based program. Nothing's stored on our machines. But it's, I'll just call it software. And for subsequent years, the $20,000 is for service and support, upgrades to that system, service calls, and the like, similar to the service contracts that we hold on every software provider that the city uses at this point.
Alderman
So I do not believe there's any duplication. And I've got to, as long as I've got the mic, I got to correct you. I did say there's a revenue problem, but I've never said that there's a tax revenue problem. When I said that we have a revenue problem in Rapid City, I stand by that to this extent, that we are sometimes, by default, uncooperative to the level that we have passed up many opportunities in this community for development and other things that would bring a natural revenue source or natural stimulus to the economy with them. That was the extent of my comment. I still feel like we can do better, encouraging development within our city. We have a lot of room here, a lot of room to grow, and we're taking some of those first steps now with a customer service evaluation in our public works and planning departments to find out where our weak links are so that we can become more customer-centered and easier agency to work with. Thank you.
Alderman Arenti, you still have the floor.
Thank you. So, Mayor, with this system, some of my concerns are that we, one, can't understand the principles of priority budgeting ourselves and implement such a program, and that ultimately, at least what I'm initially hearing is that, because I'm a finance guy, I've worked with multiple companies and different types of budgeting. My question to you is, what is it that we're actually getting? It sounds like initially to me we're getting a software program that might give you some, because really it's your budget. So, and who's going to be getting the training? Is it just you? Is it the department directors?
All the department directors and everyone that assists with budgeting.
So that's my concern, is that we're paying for a software program that will spit out what will become called priority budgeting, but when in fact what's important is the principle of how you budget. So that's my question to you, is you feel, after you've gone through this at least so far, that this is going to be worth it, even though really the big crux of the savings is going to come from the fact that we're applying those principles in our budgeting process. So it seems like a steep price to pay for a piece of online software. That's just my opinion, coming from a financial background, but I don't know if you want to add to that, but I'll just end my comments with that at this point. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair would like to recognize Alderman Nordstrom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just excited about this whole program coming forward. I studied this about 3 years ago as an opportunity to take a course in Seattle, so I got firsthand knowledge of how this works. When I saw that, I was my apologies. I was going to make a motion, and I forgot. So do you want me to make the motion? Or no? Nope. Okay. My apologies. I was going to make a motion. So I'm just excited about this whole program. And then when I brought it back here to the city of Rapid City, one of the first people that I brought it to was Department Director Brett Limbaugh. And when he saw that, and we shared some, shall I say, common experiences, and plus his experience, deeper knowledge into the whole program and how it works, he was able to carry the ball a lot farther than I ever could. So I want to acknowledge Brett with the idea of bringing this forward. I also want to remind the council members that we did have a retreat about a year and a half ago, and this was given to us as an orientation to give us an idea how this whole system works. So we had a pretty good knowledge of the basics of the whole program, how it is going to be somewhat implemented. We have to customize it to that effect as well. I see us being involved as a council, being involved in the budgeting process much sooner rather than waiting until July for the budget hearings. There is also links to that we can produce if the mayor still has those links that I brought to the city probably a year and a half ago or a year ago to show that other cities are using this and how they use it. It also can be used in times of recession. If you recall, just recently in 2008, the city had to go through a major recession process, and the way they cut the budget was pretty much straight across the board. Well, this system will give us an opportunity to take a look at each program and make adjustments by program rather than just strictly straight across the board. And the needs will be assessed in a greater value, a greater way of participating in this. I also see this as eventually the public being able to participate in the process. They will actually get to see how we're doing the budgeting and setting that up. First year, maybe two, it's going to take us a little while to get all the kinks worked out so we get a smooth operation on it. But I do believe eventually, in the long run, just from my limited knowledge and experience of it, and then adding on to what Mr. Limbaugh has showed me and explained to me, it will simplify. It will simplify the budget process and make it much easier. So I couldn't be much more of a stronger advocate than that. And the $38,000 that we're going to be putting on this is a very deep cut discount to the city of Rapid City because we are so far ahead of the curve to be able to get this whole program started. Otherwise, we'd be spending a whole lot more to do the traditional route on this. So I'd see this as a good value for the city of Rapid City. Thank you.
I would like to recognize Alderwoman Drew.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at this and realizing what this means to our budget and just processes in general, to use a new phrase, this is going to be huge. So let's just send this to council without recommendation. I think it's going to take us a while to digest this, and I don't know even if we'll come to any resolution on Tuesday night, but I would like to send it forward to council without recommendation. I move.
I've got a motion, kind of, sort of, by Drew. A little wordy into it, but we got a motion by Drew to send to council without recommendation, a second by Laurenti. Alderwoman Drew, you still have the floor.
I yield. Thank you.
Alderman Nordstrom, would you like the floor again? No? All right. And then, Mayor, I can support Alderwoman Drew's motion to send this to council. As you've stated yourself, that you believe that the $38,000 initial and then the $20,000 maintenance fee can be recouped by identifying potential areas that we can discontinue or modify and be able to see those savings. I would highly recommend if you could come up with one or two examples, not making you put it in stone, but if we can understand what type of savings or what type of program modifications or discontinuings that you're looking for, I know that would help me. And the main reason I can support this is because without additional data, I would have a hard time supporting it as it is today. And Mayor, you look like you're holding up a finger. Is there any other last-minute bit of information you'd like to give the committee members before we vote?
Yes. I do not believe I will give a public specific example of where the savings is coming, because essentially I don't want to publicly announce that I've predetermined and pre-named people who maybe will not be working here in 2017. I think that'd be a little cruel, but I will send you as much information I can. I'd like to add one more thing. What we are trying to address here is the culture of our budgeting system. This is ingrained in this community as well as many others. I think that we have the ability to perform some of the mechanical components of priority-based budgeting. We could make philosophy statements. We could create programs. We could arrange some of the mechanical components differently in order to resemble priority-based budgeting. What I believe we do not have the ability to do, at least at this stage, is to systematically and effectively link our philosophy, our practices, and our overall responsibility to provide service and to our budget system in a way that will be sustainable. I think this is an effort to break the culture of an old system, which is going to take a few generations, and this can become the new system. So I believe that we'll need the $38,000 in 2016. I believe we'll need the $20,000 in 2017. And I think after that we're going to have to go year to year to find out what type of support is required, or if we choose to add some customized components of this. So I believe this is a good investment and will pay back several times over.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, and like I said, if you don't have, I'm not really looking for concrete decisions, but if you could just put together some thoughts on what you're thinking of, whether it's a modification of a program, that type of thing, I know that would help, I believe, all the city council members. I do have a motion on the floor to send this item to council without recommendation Tuesday night. Seeing no further lights, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Got a motion by Laurenti to adjourn, second by Drew. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.